Hey guys, welcome to The Last Word, Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern. The weekend is almost upon us. The Father's Day weekend is almost upon us. Today's show is presented by the new Chrisman Marketplace. This is where all y'all can discover solutions to streamline your operations, enhance compliance, boost efficiency. The Chrisman Marketplace connects mortgage professionals with top software and services to optimize borrower experiences, automate underwriting, and simplify document management. Join the marketplace today or search for tech providers at this thing right here. Where is it? There it is. Scan that QR code right there, guys. Scan the QR code. You'll be in the marketplace. Check it out. Hey, FinLocker's in there. We are proud to be part of the marketplace. And I saw all kinds of cool companies and people in there when I was navigating around yesterday. So thank you to the Chrisman Commentary Marketplace for bringing you all today's last word. Courtney, Christy, KP, happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, guys.
Yeah, unless you're in India or Tehran.
Yeah, well,
unless you're Saturday in India or Tehran.
It's Saturday for them anyway, or maybe they're behind. I don't even know the time zones anymore. Yeah, is there a lot going on. And this week has been crazy on all kinds of fronts. But just from and I don't want to get into politics, KP. That I don't want my inbox blowing up today, but how about the cycle of news and how fast it spun over the last 72 hours?
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's like I can't keep up with it. I was on a plane the other night and watching one of the national news networks, and it was all about LA, right? And then I was on a plane the next night, and it was not at all about LA because it was on to the next thing. And last night was all about Israel, Iran. It's just what a news week it has been.
It's been a busy week.
I just feel like it's appropriate if we're going to lead out with this to say, be careful what you're consuming.
Oh, yeah.
Pay attention to your minutes, people. I mean, there's plenty of things to do, like make new loans out there and, flip things to the positive, which is the 5 loans that you could get that Rocket and Cooper don't have.
There you go, Courtney.
And you know what? If you're going to sit and listen to highly opinionated banter, which is what most news is now, I don't care what side of the house you're on, and you're going to put that in, you exchange your own energy with that, according to my rule of being. Just like if you're trolling on the Tic Tacs or whatever it is that you do with your time, just be mindful of that and the impact that has on your body and your mind and your spirit, because you need that spirit to go get those 5 loans. That's all I'm going to say.
Courtney, I am right there with you. But if you want to talk about something like good that happened this week,
let's do it.
Of positive energy.
Yeah.
The Senate passed the trigger leads bill, right? Like this is big news. And it's really good for the 5 loans that you can go get.
Amen.
Because when you get them, it's probably going to be a better experience because they're not going to be bombarded with 183 spam marketing calls. And it still protects our servicers. It still protects the original originator. The right things are in that bill. Now we just need to get it, shoved all the way across the finish line. But I like to look at the positive. We have made positive, proactive steps towards better serving our borrowers.
Yeah, it's big. And there's a ton of people that, have been pushing on this. And of course, the Mortgage Bankers Association, the BAC, the Broker Action Coalition or Advocacy Coalition, the NAM has been pushing. And so this is truly like one of those, and I know we've talked about this before, but this is like one of those industry-wide initiatives where channels have come together, companies have come together, associations have come together. And yeah, you're right, Christy. It looks like we're there, but
getting closer.
But we can't just kind of exhale and say it's now going to get done. This is when the next heavy lift needs to happen. So if y'all are out there and you haven't, gone to the back NAM or MBA site and actually corresponded with your representatives, do that, because it makes a difference. It's made a difference so far, and it could help us get that last push over the finish line.
Absolutely.
How quickly we blew through the Iran strikes by Israel is indicative of how the market reacted. We just blew right through it. We're like, that stuff happens all the time. We're just moving right along, although it could be World War III. But, it was interesting. 2 days ago, the U.S. was clearing out all of their embassies and all their people and encouraging people to get the heck out of the way in case something happens. And then art of the deal, there was 60 days for Iran to come up with a nuclear deal. And on day 61, they were bombed. And so, the market just rolled with it, right? And so I don't know if anyone watches. I'm on West Coast, right? So I actually put in a trade yesterday, made a little money this morning. I was up overnight a lot more. But it's funny, overnight, bond traders sold off equities, right? Institutional firms sold off stocks. The stock market was supposed to open up way down this morning, which was my trade and my bet that I placed. And then it was down less. When the actual market opens for us peasants, when we get to pull out our little phone and trade on like a little app, I use Interactive Broker. All the institutional money had already made their moves, and so it's a rigged game. It's absolutely a rigged game, and you as the gold makes the rules. And so we thought mortgage-backed securities would catch a bid, treasuries would catch a bid, and that was what was happening overnight. But oil price spiked up, inflation. So then everyone goes back to their inflation corner. And so here we are talking about the trigger legislation because it was a big nothing burger. And that's pretty much how the market feels about it. So unless Iran retaliates and U.S. gets dragged into it, we look at it as that's their problem and they'll work it out. I love the fact that the 46-0 out of the subcommittee was the vote to pass the House legislation. Remember, there's two versions of the trigger lead bill. So the Home Buyers Privacy Protection Act passed out of the House subcommittee, 46-0. So that does show a bipartisan effort. I was in D.C., like you said, BV, Broker Action Coalition. I was on the Hill with them. MBA had their advocacy and action on the Hill the day of all the BAC, Broker Action Coalition meetings. And it takes a lot of, as Pete Mills and Bill Kilmer's team wrote, shoe leather work, stormtrooping around the Hill and talking to, I talked to a Democratic House representative in Virginia that was kind of waffling, right? And so, but it's good to see that this got out of committee and just needs to get into a bill and passed, and then the other side of Congress, Senate has to pass. And we'll have a lot less annoying phone calls on credit triggers, but AI voice bots, they're the next nuisance. You've got, bots after bots after bots that'll be calling 330 million Americans ad nauseum. And so
iOS 26, baby, not gonna hurt me.
Yeah,
I got my own bot that's gonna screen all my calls for me.
I think like a bot that screens all my calls, and can it do my laundry?
That's Optimus. That's coming in 2027. But Courtney's team is going to win, right? So where agentic AI is going to first win will be within servicers and servicing portfolios. We have a servicing portfolio, not a huge one, mostly Gubby, and so when you have an ongoing business relationship, you can engage with your client with a lot less risk of an opt-in. Is it TCPA and CCPA compliant? Those are national privacy acts, and then a California version, of course, because California always has to outdo everyone, whether it's a riot or a CRA or a CCPA. We always, in California, have to be our own nation, I guess. And so, servicers will win with agentic AI first. And so, being able to call on a past client and convert them might stand out better than, a flyer or an email, a hard mail, whatever. So I think that's going to be the next nuisance that comes out. It's tons of bots calling, but the bots are pretty good. They don't take no for an answer, and
Right.
they won't call you a chick. I saw it, Courtney. I saw you do it. I thought that was girl-esque, but anyway, I think Courtney's team and them, they're going to win. Servicers are going to win first, and then they'll make its way into the origination channel later this year.
And I think when Kevin's saying that, he means our direct-to-consumer channels, not actually the servicers. The servicers always get the, can I say shit on this program? Shit end of the stick. We're talking about bombing things, so I can say shit, right?
Yeah.
And
Robbie's going to text you.
He just said language. Oh no, that was theirs to KP.
But I think that, context, fellas, right? But I think that, yes, until, right, people get desensitized to it.
Yeah.
And I think that will happen. I think that at the end of the day, heart wins. I am the woo-woo princess of today's programming, apparently. I think that people, just like I know not to answer certain versions of unlisted phone calls during political cycles and, things like that. I think that, we're really going to have to take either telephony to a new place to get these people to actually talk to us, because, the most distracted generation is coming up and through, and they're definitely not going to want to talk on the phone with us. But we'll see there. The thing that I'm most curious about the trigger lead approvals and at the strength that it came through is I wonder, just at a very human level, each of the people that made a vote toward passing this legislation has been on just the receiving end of the baloniousness of just getting, like, I wonder if they even understand kind of like the broader issues in the market and, people wanting to retain, thank you, Paul, the people wanting to retain their portfolios and fairness and all of this other stuff. Because I remember when I started in this industry, I was down in Wayne County, Michigan, at the Wayne County Courthouse. This is 313 Detroit, people. And it was my job to defend large financial institutions against foreclosure avoidance, right? And the first thing I did every time I went into the courtroom is explained what a mortgage was and what a note was to a judge.
Right.
Right. And then when I explained how much money the consumer had not paid on their house and related it to the judge immediately would side on behalf of the bank. Right. And so I just kind of think it's this. I mean, I think it's funny. It's good political theater. I'm glad that there's support for it. I think that it's a good thing overall. But I question and wonder the motives behind it. And I will not say any more four-letter words today.
Well, like anything, at the end of the day, follow the money. So we'll see where the smart money goes as it relates to this particular legislation. But one of the not tricks but tactics that the associations that would go on the Hill, KP, you probably saw this happen, was they would, in the office with, whether it was a representative of the legislator or the legislator themselves, one of our cohorts would say, let's see what happens. And they literally would, go on to somebody's point of sale and do an application and order credit and, do the 30, 29, the countdown, and then boom, here they come. Just floods of calls and texts. And, so I think a couple of those happening to, the legislators themselves was a little bit of an eye-opening thing. Because, early on, one could argue that there was a benefit for this data and this process so that, consumers could potentially get other offers and consider offers. But I think once you get past 25 offers, it turns from a benefit to just a plain out, annoyance. So, and we got there fast.
There's also the potential of scams. And you think about the number of people that are trying to come after you. I mean, The other morning I got 17 attempts of somebody trying to change my password on Facebook at 3 a.m. And, so an extra hour up earlier, but dealing with all of that and changing my passwords and unlinking things from my Facebook. And, because back in the day, it was such a great thing to log into everything with Facebook and you didn't have to create a new password. And now you can see where that that goes, how many consumers are actually getting a benefit, even if it was limited to 2 or 3? Because they're not going to answer the phone. They're going to think it's a scam. They're worried about it. They've heard about somebody who's been duped. This is their biggest transaction with all their personal information. And so it does become an annoyance.
Yeah.
And we have to think about that too, with what happens when we use bots to call people, and how are they going to start behaving? You know, they didn't have this as a field of study where I went to school at the time that I went to school, behavioral economics, and I really wish they had. It would have been my go-to thing instead of just having a degree in economics. That psychology component tells us where people do things. It tells us how they're going to react to what's happening. And I think what we're going to see is it makes Courtney's job harder as she runs servicing. That initially there's going to be this uptick, and then people's behavior will change because they're not excited about talking to a bot. I can get excited about talking to a bot when I call into somewhere. I am not super excited about maybe having a bot call me unless it's something that I reached out to them for. You know, I love it when I call an airline and they say the call wait time is, 19 minutes. And you're like, holy cow. I mean, I think usually it's probably more like 3 hours because you're only calling when something horrible happens. And if they could have a bot serve me and take care of my need when I called in, or that person could call me back, fantastic, right? That's where we end up with something that's good. So we need to think about how we're implementing this technology and how we are going to guide people's behaviors because of how annoyed they're going to be with us.
Yeah, that's one perspective, right? So, you're not everybody, just so you know. And so, I if we're looking for universal truths, yeah, I agree. If you're reaching out to customer service and you want to be served the most efficient manner possible, you would love it. I have my first property I bought in 2001 in Austin. I still have it. I owe about 32 grand left on it. I bought it for 110.5. Wells was a servicer up until 2 years ago, and then Mr. Cooper bought it. 4.875% fixed rate. Just a few years left on the deal. I don't know what happened. I think I switched checking accounts or something, and I called in and I talked to a bot, and I gave it all my information to change my ACH account. And it was super convenient and quick, and I loved it. And so when I want to distinguish the difference between like servicer and consumer direct, right? So retention teams are, I would say consumers generally look at that as, it's customer service for me with my servicer. And so if I got a phone call and it said, CMG, which is clearly on all my statements, I might be willing to pick that up, CMG offer or CMG servicing department or whatever it is. And then I'm telling you, the demos I've heard, these things are having full-blown live conversations, and they're, and it's about calling at the time when the person wants to be served on a refinance or a cash out or whatever. And they're going to catch more opportunities than, a trigger lead is likely too late, right? A trigger lead means someone's already captured them at the right time and they're pulling credit. So this is, hey, it's Jesse, the Australian bot. I'm calling, just doing a little check-in. Everything looks great with your loan. Is there any interest? Do you guys need any cash for anything? Do you guys have any high credit card debt that's higher than, going market rates, and then someone's like, at that moment, they're like, oh yeah, I do have high credit card debt. Or are you interested in building a pool?
Courtney's bot will already know all that because they'll have all that.
100%. And so I look at consumer direct as like trying to find someone who maybe, let's say like a first-time home buyer.
Yeah.
That's a little bit, obviously tougher of an ask. But if a realtor and originator have already kind of talked to this context, so they know there's some interest coming up, and then the follow-up is done by the bot, then it converts, right? Yeah. And so I will say the younger generation, they don't want to pick up the phone, but if the conversation is introduced by a text, hey, do you want someone to call you real quick about so-and-so? If you've got a proper opt-in, if you are TCPA and CCPA compliant, you just catch them at the right time because you're pinging on them, maybe in a more effective manner. I agree. It could be, like I said, to start off this whole line of conversation, it could be the next nuisance and just the next trigger lead, right? Except that it's not based on a credit trigger. It's maybe based on life event data or, hey, you know what? We just noticed you have a ton of equity in your home. Hey, did you know rates are coming down? Did you know there's this new program? Did you know, there's just always something to talk about, which is the whole point of what originators and realtors do. And if you have a bot that's relentless, that never sleeps, that's unbiased, that makes no phone calls and doesn't talk back and doesn't take no for an answer, I think they're going to convert more. And the data has been showing that. And so, yeah, maybe, boomers don't like it, or maybe they do. I heard it talk to some old lady, out in Palm Desert, and she's like, yeah, you guys call me all the time. And then the bot's like, yeah, but if you just give me some information, I can get you ready to go, that next level. And the lady's like, okay, fine. And we were all in the room like, oh my God, like it just rolled right over this old lady and talked over her, by the way, which was female to female. So I guess it's okay, and so, we were like blown away because 995 times out of 1,000, any originator would be like, yeah, okay, no problem, ma'am. Okay, sorry to bother you. Okay, no problem. We'll call you back later. Never call back, never do the deal, never get the deal. It's gone forever, done. Right. And so I do think it's meaningful if done right. I think it'll get bastardized initially. But over the years to come, when there's some lawsuits and people getting sued for not doing it the right way and not having proper opt-ins, I think ultimately it'll be a very, very powerful piece of tech.
No question. So event-wise, there was a bunch of stuff this week, which is kind of weird. As I looked at it, I'm like, isn't this summer? I mean, summer's kind of officially here. I know the calendar doesn't say that, but by most people's calendar, post-Memorial is the summer. So there was, I don't know, at least 4 events that I'm aware of, because KP, you were at an event in LA. I started the week in Boston at the MISMO Spring Summit, did a day and a half with those folks. They hosted a workshop on open banking, which was fascinating. I don't think a lot of people think about like the concept of open banking in our industry. Open banking is a thing in other countries, like real open banking where consumers actually can control who from their phone, who can have access to certain of their data. So that was a super interesting workshop. It was a full room, 3 hours of full engagement. It'll be really interesting to see where that working group kind of takes this initiative, because the session was set up to kind of figure out, is there a there for MISMO and through the MBA to work on? And it was clear based on the dialogue and the discussion that there is. And there was a really cool conversation, Courtney, that kind of, you and I have had this conversation. Imagine a world where a consumer 6 months before they're ready to buy uses an app to help them prepare for the mortgage, tied to a loan officer, a lender, of course. And through that process, they're leveraging their own data, whether it's banking data, credit data, income and employment data, so direct source data that's helping them get ready and then get approved and then actually facilitate closing. But imagine a world where that connectivity to that direct data for the consumer now lives on in perpetuity into the servicing of that loan, right? And what benefit back to the consumer could that bring if that servicer still had visibility into certain pieces of that consumer's key financial data? Could we get ahead of, defaults in some cases? KP, to your point, based on that data, we could get ahead of better financial products for that consumer based on what we know. So it was pretty cool to kind of hear the conversation start with the early part of the funnel and actually in the room go all the way through servicing. So that was cool. And then I went from there to Florida for the Florida Mortgage Bankers annual conference. And they combined kind of a production and secondary event. So they had 2 tracks. They had a track for production and a track for secondary. I spoke in the production track and stayed mostly in that side. Almost every presentation, including Laura Escobar, who was the keynote, talked about the impact of AI. And pretty much everybody said all the speakers said, if you're not embracing it, then toodaloo, bye-bye. It's over for you. And this was down to the individual loan officers, right? We're telling loan officers, you need to embrace AI to some level. And so two cool events, two totally different populations of people. You know, event one, a lot of propeller hats in the room, and then the production people in the second meeting.
I think Jordan has a great comment here talking about, just what happens and the ability to hit. I know it's kind of a long comment, and no, not late again. You were getting your thoughts in process and in place and making them sound coherent. It's just a great acknowledgement of where we are. And sometimes, tie this back to the actual business. We always talk about following the money. And in this case, if we can do a better job of collections, that actually impacts the cost of money, right? So when you think about the cost of money, you think about your hurdle rate, if you will. Even if you're not putting stuff on your report, somebody has to put that money out, and they're thinking about the hurdle rate, right? So your hurdle rate is your cost of funds plus your loan losses, plus the minimum cost to originate, plus a minimum profitability, depending on how you want to calculate that. So when you have that hurdle rate, if you can reduce the cost of loan losses and increase your collections, that's actually going to have a positive impact to interest rates on any type of loan that you have. And so how we do employ AI and how we do make that connection with consumers to help give them that next product, to help reduce their overall debt and their debt burden so that everything is more affordable, how we help them with paying us if we're the mortgage holder, whatever that looks like, that impacts where interest rates are going to be. That impacts housing affordability, and it impacts the originator's ability to do their job. So this is all interconnected. The money is there. The investment and the ROI need to be there too.
I mean, Courtney, what would your world have looked like if you had these type of tools when the pandemic hit? Like, come on.
Well, I mean, when the pandemic hit, we were first to market with an online opt-in for forbearance. So we had the first call center, and I'm just proud of my team. I really and these are people that I've now worked with for decades, but when we sat in a room all weekend, not giving each other COVID, I gave everyone COVID, by the way, that weekend, and got that thing out there. It was, that was cool. But I mean, I think that, yes, however, right. I'm the less I'm not a salesperson. I'm an ops person. I always have been, and nobody stays in mortgage servicing for as long as I have, unless you're motivated by keeping people in their homes and making sure that they understand it. I'm also poorer than everyone on this call for anybody who's interested in being motivated by matters of the heart. Just be prepared for that piece of it. And I would say this, at the end of the day, you have to look at actual impact of the thing versus the investment. And I will tell you, these technology companies with these tools are very, very, very expensive, and servicing margins are very, very, very low. And so you have to be able to show there's meat with the potatoes, because potatoes are very cheap. Steak is very expensive, and servicers can't afford steak. And so, I see more tech and more people that want to pitch things in servicing, and I go immediately to how much and what's the bang for my buck. Because in a demo, to Kevin's point, everything's amazing, right? But when you talk about not only cost of the tech, but cost of deployment of the tech, and then prioritization of that within an organization that needs to be nimble, that's a huge piece of it, right? Secondarily, anytime that we can get a consumer to digitally give us bits of information where we can check the boxes from a requirements perspective for COVID, the example that you had, Brian, it was just, are you impacted by COVID-19? It wasn't, do you have it? Was it your job? Was it whatever? It was just, are you impacted? And so that would have been a perfect use case if you had the tool deployed and you were talking about low code, no code programming of the thing to get it out into the populace. Even better if it's multiple languages.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to confirm, same thing, natural disasters, right? Natural disasters are always a big event from a servicing perspective. They blow call centers out of the water because everybody wants to know what's available to them. California wildfire, same thing, right? When it's discrete and it's concrete, I think it's really, really good. However, you have to be able to test it. And that would be the last piece of it, right? So it's cost of deployment, cost of ongoing usage, and then cost of keeping the human in the loop, the quality control component of it, and whether or not it's good, and the documentation of that, right? So the biggest thing where tech people run into brick walls is that there's a lot of really nice technology nerds who can do business requirements and deploy technology and all this other stuff. They suck at writing down what they did, why they did it, and how they tested it. And that's why there has been before right now all of this criticism with regard to technology, because if you don't write down what you did and why you did it, when you get audited, it is very, very hard to look at you kindly if there was a disparate impact for what you did, right? And I would, all of these things are things that you have to think about when you're innovating, particularly in highly regulated environments. Mortgage, insurance, healthcare, like these are the ones where less sophisticated people are taken advantage of, not always intentionally, by moments like this, right? And those are the big things that you have to think about if you're a mortgage company and you're thinking about doing it. Yes, the upside is amazing, but I would say, hey, if you're a multi-business channel operation like CMG, like many mortgage companies on the planet, pick one, deploy it well, right? And teach all of your business lines to use it so that you don't have multiple deployments. You have expert usage of the same. You can have one testing team, right, associated with the same. And I think that what happens with mortgage CEOs, and I see the time. Sorry, you just asked me a question.
No,
I
you're
really
good.
like. If you talk to mortgage CEOs, no offense to any mortgage CEOs or C-suite folks on the call, it's always what's your AI strategy and show me the shiny pennies. And CEOs, God love you, none of you know what it actually takes to deploy these things and keep them safe. And so make sure you have your operator in the room when you're doing these tech demos, and make sure you ask those 2 money questions up front, because you'll see very quickly your margin goes even on the sales side.
I'll try and bring us home, Brian, and let you get last word. Good analogy on the meat potatoes. Cattle future prices are soaring. It was one of the only components of the CPI that went up. Inflation is down and falling like a rock. There's been absolutely zero effect so far of tariffs. Doesn't mean there won't be, but there's been literally nothing. Apparel went down, all the cheap crap from China. New car prices down. Thought those were supposed to be expensive. There is basically, housing is the driver of inflation, and we all know what's going on with home price appreciation. I love that you went to the MISMO Summit. I was on a 3-hour call there. You guys, if you know, I'm on the board, and it's like a mortgage information data standard. And to Courtney's point, a lot of these tech companies, let them foot the bill. Let them figure it out. You know, we're in the .com era right now. Pets.com, this guy.com, that girl.com, that lady.com, this chick.com, whatever. And a lot of them are going to fail. And so let them bear all that cost. And then, like Courtney said, it's up to us as business operators to pick winners and then get ROI. And so we're not building our own voice AI bot. We could. Found some good tech out there, but I'd rather someone else do it, you know, on their dime. And so then you deploy it. And so I think, you know, Courtney's got it head on with any tech partner, right? So if you scan the QR code and you check out the marketplace, you can see a lot of companies that have been building great technology that you can partner with. And you got to pick a winner, pick one that you're going to try and move forward and prove it out and make it work and execute.
Love it. Christy, you're going to miss us. We're going to miss you next week.
I'm going to miss you next week. I know. This conversation was good.
I loved it. I wish we could go for another half hour, but we're up against All My Children. They're the next story on. So
I thought it was Guiding Light.
Whatever. They're all the same. They're all the same.
Happy Father's Day, guys.
Hey.
Yeah. Happy Father's Day to all the pappies out there. Guys, have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in. Come back again next Friday. We'll see you here on The Last Word. Peace, y'all.
Bye, guys.